Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell to Bell. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, and we have a phenomenal show for you guys today. Well, Backlash is in the rear view mirror, and so too is Randy Orton. So who is the next challenger for John Cena's undisputed WWE Championship? And speaking of world champions, WWE just put an expiration date on Jey Uso's title reign. Sure feels like it after this week's Monday Night Raw. And finally, is Solo Sikoa rebuilding the Bloodline again? We'll talk about all of that and more on this edition of Bell to Bell. But before we get started, as always, we like to remind you, if you enjoy this content, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Nick Belsky, or you can find our audio platforms at Bell to Bell on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's get things kicking with the Unseen 17 and still your undisputed WWE Champion, John Cena. He takes care of Randy Orton at Backlash by some less than altruistic means, right? But I'll say this, Orton and Cena, after 20 plus years of a rivalry, 20 plus years of going back and forth, over 30 combined world titles between them, they did what everybody wanted them to do in St. Louis. They played the hits. We saw so many spots, so many moves that we have seen in the past of this rivalry. We saw the reversal of the attitude adjustment into an RKO where both of them end up hitting their finisher kind of 50%. That was a delineation point in this matchup, right? Early on, it was a chess match. It was headlocks. It was slow-paced, methodical, and things picked up after both of them hit their finisher at the exact same time there. So I loved that move. And then out of the 800, it felt like RKOs that we saw on Saturday night, the RKO off the shoulder tackle. It is an oldie but a goodie. But that is, to me, probably the most well-executed move that we saw in all of Saturday night. And we saw a lot of good in-ring work. But the RKO off the shoulder tackle, that got me off the couch. It got me off the couch. I was so excited. It was the peak out of nowhere level RKO. So I think in-ring wise, they played the hits. And I think altogether, because I went back and I watched the WrestleMania main event between John Cena and Cody Rhodes, I think this was a better match. And I think most people would tend to agree with that. This was the better match. Now, at the end of it, it's exactly what you should come to expect during this run for John Cena, because he can't win clean. Elimination Chamber. Seth Rollins curb stomps CM Punk, who takes advantage. John Cena right after. He gets the win. WrestleMania, Travis Scott makes his 30-minute entrance and eventually gets down to the ring and costs Cody Rhodes in favor of John Cena. Wins, but doesn't win clean. And here we are again. Not one, but two refs are getting absolutely pounded in the ring. Chad Patton, who I guess doesn't have many friends in the back, gets two ref bumps. And then Eddie Orengo comes out. He gets one title shot to the head. And all of a sudden, all the WWE officials come out. A couple things out of this ending. One, Nick Aldis' storyline continued with Randy Orton. We saw it the second Orton got over to Smackdown. He RKO'd Aldis early on. We had that little backstage where he's paying the fine and he says, oh, this one's for next time. I paid double. We saw that leading into Mania. I wanted to see that matchup at WrestleMania. When Kevin Owens went down, I said, that is the best option here, is to get Nick Aldis and Randy Orton. Now they went with Joe Hendry. I think it worked out. I think it was good, but we need to continue this storyline of frustration between the SmackDown general manager and the Viper. And that's what we got a little bit of here in the main event of Backlash. And then when all the WWE officials have been RKO'd, the fans have gone crazy because they've seen 20 RKOs in 15 seconds. Who is it that comes out and costs Randy Orton? Who is it that comes out and has the back of the last true champion? It's R-Truth. It is R-Truth. And I'm probably not alone in saying I completely forgot about all those backstage segments of R-Truth saying, hey, I still believe in John Cena, of him literally going up to Randy Orton saying, you don't have any hope at winning in St. Louis, Missouri at Backlash because you're going up against the last true WWE champion. R-Truth, who I didn't think really had the, I guess, blind confidence to go out there and actually interfere in the Backlash main event. And yet there he is, stopping a boot from going right off of John Cena's head. At some point, we're going to see the boot, but it's just wasn't meant to be at Backlash. R-Truth gets in the ring. He gets an RKO for his time, and then John Cena with the low blow, title shot to the head, the 1-2-3, and he retains over Randy Orton. So the question becomes, what's next? Or more importantly, who's next for John Cena? As far as what's next, I think his next title defense will likely be at Money in the Bank, right? You look at the World Heavyweight Championship, and it's going to be defended in a week and a half at Saturday night's main event, Jey Uso versus Logan Paul. And then it'll be defended, whoever comes out of that, I'm going to predict it's going to be Jey Uso, spoiler alert, is going to face Gunther on the Monday Night Raw after Money in the Bank. So that tells me that we are likely to get Cena defending the title at the Intuit Dome in LA, which is a little interesting because this is supposed to be a farewell tour. Now you see me, you won't see me again. It would be his second appearance at the Intuit Dome. That's where this entire thing started back on the Raw debut back in January 6th, but I digress to that point. Who's next is the other important factor here. I think it's going to be a matchup at Money in the Bank, but who's next? Yeah, R-Truth is there, and maybe R-Truth got some sense knocked into him with that attitude adjustment through the table at the press conference, but that doesn't scream to me a PLE title defense for John Cena. That screams to me the first match that we've seen him have on TV in a long time. Maybe in one of these appearances, you're setting up a matchup at Money in the Bank, and you also have a match with R-Truth where John Cena maybe doesn't put the title up, but if he does, he retains. You get a payoff to that. We got a little bit of John Cena, R-Truth, because that was a fun storyline back in the day. But I think R-Truth can be taken out of contention for the next challenger or true challenger at a PLE for John Cena's WWE Championship. Randy Orton has every right to request a rematch. He does. But I don't think he's going to get it for two reasons. One, they build Backlash as this last time ever matchup between John Cena and Randy Orton. They took out all the bells and whistles. They had their best editors on the video packages for this one, and they continued to talk about it time after time after time. 25 years comes down to this, the final matchup between Cena versus Orton. They go back on it, and they have that matchup again at Money in the Bank. Is anybody going to believe it's the last time ever? Is anybody going to be able to appreciate that as the last time ever? Because I think that we got pretty much exactly what we wanted out of that Backlash main event between Cena and Orton. So I don't know if they're going to run it back because of that factor, but also Randy has to go to one person to be able to get that match. Maybe two. John Cena is one, and he doesn't feel like somebody who is going to give second chances very often currently. And number two is Nick Aldis. And what did I say earlier? The tension between Nick Aldis and Randy Orton continues to rise. It doesn't seem to me that Nick Aldis is going to be in a position to grant Randy Orton any wishes. So while he does have every right to want a rematch, I just don't see it coming for Randy Orton. I might be wrong, but it feels like Cena's not going to give it to him. And it does not feel like Nick Aldis is going to be open to giving him a rematch either. Now we are under a month away, which means what we need is somebody who has been involved with Cena in this run in 2025, which means, no, you can't bring back Roman Reigns and quickly build to a match at Money in the Bank. No, you can't bring in AJ Styles and build to a match at Money in the Bank. You need somebody with a little bit more connective tissue to this version of John Cena. And that's either the guy that he kind of kicked it off against or the guy that he won the title against. Obviously, you know who the second one is, Cody Rhodes. It might be a little too early to have the payoff for Cody Rhodes. It feels like a SummerSlam type matchup, maybe even a Survivor Series type matchup, depending on how long Cody Rhodes stays off of WWE television. But we have 3 months till SummerSlam. So you have the time to tell Rhodes coming back and going after the WWE title with that. More likely to me is CM Punk. I said that's the guy that this all started against. That's the win that kicked off John Cena's title run, I would say, because that got him the match at Mania with Cody Rhodes. Now, the thing is, CM Punk is on Monday Night Raw, and he is currently intertwined with Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and the Paul Heyman alliance. That could be finished at Saturday night's main event. Not saying that the story between Punk and Rollins will be over, but the involvement in the current situation could be over at Saturday night's main event. And maybe, just maybe, CM Punk says, you know what? It's not worth my time, because you know what I want? I want to be competition for John Cena. That's how he ended Backlash, is yelling into the microphone, John Cena, saying, what I need is competition. And who better at that PLE specifically, at Money in the Bank, to go out there and provide that competition than CM Punk? We got little glimpses of it in the Elimination Chamber. We got about 3 to 5 minutes of those two going head to head. We'd get a, maybe not proper build, because that's pretty quick build, but we have the history baked in between Cena and Punk. We have the history specifically at Money in the Bank from 2011. And I think when you look at Monday Night Raw, there's too many cooks in that kitchen. There's too many competitors in the World Heavyweight Championship picture for CM Punk to be able to slide his way in there, especially considering the current champion is Jey Uso. So you'd have to do some work to see Jey Uso go up against CM Punk, whereas the only thing standing between CM Punk going after John Cena at Money in the Bank is the fact that they're on separate brands. But I think at this point we know John Cena's title and his rivals will be able to transcend brands during this farewell tour. So I could see it being CM Punk. Cody Rhodes is a possibility. It feels too early. And Randy Orton has every right to want a rematch. I'm saying it, but is Aldis going to grant that? Is Cena going to grant that? I don't see either of those happening. So to me, the favorite right now is CM Punk. And maybe we see something on Friday night that kind of points us in a different direction. Maybe it is R-Truth. I don't know how many people would want to see that as a main event to a PLE, or maybe even an opener to a PLE, but I don't see John Cena doing openers on this run. But at the end of the day, it's going to have to be someone substantial. And I think those three names kind of fit the bill for John Cena. Let's shift over to the other world champion, and that one is Jey Uso. The question I asked to lead off this show is WWE putting an expiration date on Jey Uso's title run 23 days into it? We saw him defend the belt against Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw a couple weeks ago. We have him defending the belt at Saturday night's main event in about a week and a half against Logan Paul. And then if he gets through that, we have him defending the belt on the night after Money in the Bank against Gunther. That's crazy that we're already circling back to that all Gunther needed to do before turning his attention back to the World Heavyweight title was squash Pat McAfee in a matchup that I think all of us knew the result, but some of us were pleasantly surprised at the process to get to the result. But Gunther is back in the World Heavyweight title picture. One that I said earlier is already chock full of people that are gunning for Jey Uso. Now, when you look at Uso, it's been 15 plus years that led to WrestleMania 41 and led to him winning that World Heavyweight title. He's at the mountaintop of the industry. But again, you look at how everything is stacking up. I don't know how long Jey Uso is going to hold on to this title. Logan Paul's match at Saturday night's main event, I think he'll hold on there. I don't think they're going to put the belt on Logan Paul. Seth Rollins, who is one of the hottest wrestlers in the industry right now, he's coming after that title. Now, there's a little bit of a roadblock in CM Punk and Sami Zayn, but I wouldn't be surprised if he dispatched him at Saturday night's main event and once again turned his attention to the World Heavyweight title. We already see that Paul Heyman can pull some strings and get things before anybody else can. Seth Rollins is gunning for that title, and I'm not sure how long they're going to go without giving it to him. And then there's Gunther, right? Who already now has a match the day after Money in the Bank, which is a little suspicious to me. And that's where I have this idea that that might be the expiration date. Because as Gunther said on Monday Night Raw, and as we all are aware of, he has won 80% of his matches since joining the main roster. Sorry, that's not right. He's won more than 80% of his matches. He's been a champion more than 80% of the time that he's spent on the main roster, if I can get my facts correct. I don't see them making him lose again. It certainly can't be, he he gets surprised again by Jey Uso because he got surprised by Sami Zayn at WrestleMania 40. And what did he do? He came back and he won the World Heavyweight Championship. He got surprised by Jey Uso at WrestleMania 41, and he went out and he squashed Pat McAfee, and now he's going after the World Heavyweight Championship again. Is he going to lose again? I don't think they can do that. I just don't. It took Gunther away for 3 weeks before they said, all right, he's back. And I think the fact that it's after Money in the Bank is key here, because I'm just going to say this. Gunther cannot lose clean again. He can't tap out again. WWE wants him to be this overwhelming force. They built him to be that going into WrestleMania 40, and he lost. They built him back, and he was that once again going into WrestleMania 41. Maybe not as strong as he was at WrestleMania 40, but he was still looked at as a very strong competitor at WrestleMania 41, and he tapped out to his own move. If he loses clean again, I just don't know where you go from there. I think you're putting yourself in too much of a corner, and you're taking this guy way too far off the board. So I don't think Gunther can lose clean. But the fact that it's after Money in the Bank. Last year, we got it in the same night, the cash in from Drew McIntyre that was unsuccessful. Do we get a cash in that matchup on Monday Night Raw? I think those are the two outcomes here. Either somebody cashes in or Gunther wins. Now, there is a couple of ways you can go with the cash in. Somebody cashes in and takes the pin from Jey Uso to keep Gunther from getting pinned or actually losing the match, or somebody cashes in to win. I don't know who that could be. We'll have to wait and see the Money in the Bank participants. The qualifiers start this upcoming week. But to me, I think the odds of Jey Uso retaining that title through that night, June 9th, are very, very low. Now, again, somebody famously said, don't tell me the odds. I don't want to know the odds. Maybe that's Jey Uso right now. But it feels to me that by stacking up not just Gunther, but Gunther on the Monday Night Raw after Money in the Bank, it feels to me that that's the expiration date for Jey Uso's World Heavyweight title reign. Let me know in the comment section. Do you agree? Am I off my rocker? Is this just me speculating too wildly? Or is this something that you could feasibly see happening in the near future? Let's close out this episode with a discussion on Solo Sikoa, because outside of John Cena versus Randy Orton, I think this was the biggest bit of news that came out of Backlash, which is potentially another Bloodline. We'll talk about that. Jacob Fatu retains the title at Backlash over LA Knight, over Damian Priest, and over Drew McIntyre, who the latter two took themselves out with an absolutely crazy South of Heaven chokeslam through a table out in the stands. It becomes Fatu versus Knight one-on-one, and wouldn't you know, Solo Sikoa had a plan. Not only does he come out to go after LA Knight, but so too does a new face. Jeff Cobb debuts in WWE by clotheslining LA Knight and basically putting him on a platter for Jacob Fatu to get the 1, 2, 3 and successfully retain his United States Championship. Now, if you don't know Jeff Cobb, he has a very, very long list of accomplishments that I've written down here, and I'm probably missing some. 3-time IWGP Tag Team Champion, 1-time New Japan Never Openweight Champion. He is a former Lucha Underground and PWG World Champion, also a 1-time PWG Tag Team Champion, and he's a former Ring of Honor Television Champion. He's been all over the map. He has done things in every corner of the wrestling industry, and he's an absolute bulldozer. Now, in WWE, after weeks of speculation, he debuts alongside Solo Sikoa and tentatively Jacob Fatu. The question that I have here is Solo Sikoa rebuilding the Bloodline again? Are we getting Bloodline 3.0? I don't know about that. I have no issue with Solo rebuilding a faction, because I think that was some of his best work once he got comfortable in the shoes of being the new tribal chief last year. Now, the storyline paid off. And at the end of the day, a storyline that kicked off on the Smackdown after Mania last year was completely wrapped up and didn't even get a spotlight on WrestleMania this year. And I think that goes to show that maybe pitting him against Roman Reigns just wasn't going to be a recipe for success. But him as a leader of a faction on Friday Night SmackDown, I don't hate the idea of. But two things. This new faction, however it looks, cannot be Bloodline related. I think that ended on the Monday Night Raw debut on Netflix. That ended with Roman taking out Solo Sikoa and taking back the Ulufala. I don't think this could be related at all to being a Bloodline type faction outside of the fact that Solo Sikoa is trying to be the spearhead of it, because after he loses on the Raw debut on Netflix, takes a couple weeks off, he comes back, and all of a sudden, Jacob Fatu is kind of calling the shots, and Solo Sikoa had to back up and kind of accept that. But he's done his best work as this de facto cult leader. And I think that's where they need to lean into. It can't be Bloodline related, mainly because it wipes away the impact and the importance of that first match on Netflix between him and Roman Reigns, but also because Jeff Cobb's not related and Jeff Cobb's not Samoan. Jeff Cobb is Hawaiian. So with that and the fact that we've kind of already put a nice bow on the entire Bloodline storyline, I think that if you're going to have this faction, it needs to be something else. It could be a lot of things, but it cannot be Bloodline related. And secondly, is adding somebody with more pedigree than Solo Sikoa again going to work? That is a huge question mark to me, because we saw how it went with Jacob Fatu, right? Solo was there. You bring in the Tongans, and I think that worked, right? Tama Tonga, a name that everybody knows. Tongaloa, a name that most people know. But at the end of the day, you couldn't see either of them, at least in the singles realm, surpassing Solo Sikoa. Then they bring Jacob Fatu into the fold, and everybody immediately is saying that's the future. That's a WrestleMania main eventer. How many times have we heard that? He hasn't been on the roster for more than a calendar year, and we've been hearing that. Fatu was a bigger draw than Solo Sikoa in a faction that Solo Sikoa was supposed to be the leader. This might be a repeat with Jeff Cobb, because Solo, albeit somebody who I think deserves more credit than he has gotten for his work over the past year, is not going to be a stable in the main event. I'm not saying Jeff Cobb will be, but I think there's a higher percent chance that he is than it is that Solo gets back into that realm, right? We saw Solo go up against Cody Rhodes for the WWE title a couple times last year. Shoot, that was a SummerSlam matchup, SummerSlam main event matchup. And it didn't hit correctly. I think there's more of a chance that Jeff Cobb gets there. So I'm a little hesitant to have Cobb immediately join Solo and immediately start this new faction when Cobb can probably, once again, repeat the past and surpass Solo Sikoa in less than a calendar year. Fatu did it. Cobb could probably do it as well. Now, the one thing that I will say I would really much like out of this is this being the way that Jacob Fatu breaks loose from Solo Sikoa and from that bond that he's had with Solo and with the Tongans, who have been off TV for some time now. Because Jeff Cobb, as we saw on Saturday, is not somebody that Jacob Fatu is very fond of. Or at the very least, he wasn't fond of the way that Jeff Cobb kind of introduced himself into WWE. He was a little hesitant to celebrate the victory because he was a little surprised that Jeff was there. He wasn't ready for that. He wasn't expecting that. And if you look at their history against each other, he probably wasn't happy about that either. So if this is the way that we get Jacob Fatu to branch out and be a true solo act, no pun intended, then I'm A-okay with all of this. And like I said, I'm A-okay with Solo being a faction leader on Friday Night SmackDown, but it just cannot be Bloodline related. And you have to be careful when you have somebody the caliber of Jeff Cobb, who is supposed to be underneath Solo in this faction. Those are my only concerns. But No. To answer the question that we posed at the beginning of this segment, Solo Sikoa is not rebuilding the bloodline. He's rebuilding a faction, but it better not be anything related to the storyline that has tied WWE together since 2020. You put a bow on it, leave it packaged, and leave it in the archives until you need to bring it out for nostalgia's sake. But if you're going to do it, you don't bring it out for nostalgia's sake with Solo Sikoa. You don't bring it out with the fifth person on the call sheet. You bring it out with Roman Reigns. And I think that's the only way that we should see anything bloodline related come back in to the fold of WWE. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bell to Bell. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, if you enjoyed this content, to like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Nick Belsky, or you can find us on our audio platforms by searching Bell to Bell on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.